Eala should be one of the easiest young tennis stars in the world to support. She is 21 years old. She has made history for the Philippines. She has beaten major champions. She has carried a flag into places where Filipino tennis had rarely been part of the global conversation. And yet, the bigger she becomes, the louder one question gets. Why do some people seem to hate Eala? That question sounds simple. It is not, because the criticism around Alex does not come from one place. Some people say the hype around her has moved too fast. Some complain about the attention she receives. Some get frustrated with parts of her fan base. Some seem exhausted by seeing her name in every tennis discussion. And sometimes the controversy becomes much more extreme than normal sports debate. That is where the story gets strange. Because if Alex had created a major scandal, the backlash would be easy to explain. If she had insulted opponents, attacked other players, or built her image around controversy, there would be an obvious starting point. But that explanation does not fit very well. So before deciding whether the criticism is fair, there is a more important question. What are people actually reacting to? Alex herself? The hype around her? The behavior of some supporters? National pride? Or something that social media has turned into a much bigger conflict than it really is? To answer that, we first have to understand why Alex suddenly matters so much. Washington is a good place to start. Across the net in the final was Jessica Pegula, one of the most established American players of her generation. Alex lost the opening set, 4-6. Then she took the second, 6-4. The final set was not close, 6-0. With that result, Alex became the first player from the Philippines to win a WTA Tour singles title. That alone would have been historic. But the reaction around the tournament made the moment even bigger. Tournament organizers said at least 80% of the ticket inquiries they had received in the previous month were asking when Alex would play. Think about what that means. This was Washington. Not Manila, not a Philippine exhibition. An American tournament was receiving huge demand connected to a 21-year-old Filipino player. The attention was real. So was the emotion around it. For many Filipino fans, Alex is not simply another promising athlete. She represents something that had been missing, a visible path into elite singles tennis, a player from the Philippines walking onto major courts and beating names that casual fans already know. That is why her wins can feel bigger than the score. They become national moments. For a country better known internationally for basketball and boxing, seeing a Filipino player break through in elite singles tennis feels unusual. There is no long list of Philippine WTA champions behind her. There is no old tradition that makes this success feel routine. Alex is helping create the reference point while people are watching. That changes the emotional weight of every result. When she wins, supporters are not only celebrating one player, they are celebrating proof that a Filipino athlete can enter a space where the country had rarely been represented at this level. That kind of connection is powerful. It is also dangerous for a simple reason. The more meaning people attach to one athlete, the more every reaction around that athlete becomes amplified. And once an athlete becomes a symbol, the reaction to that athlete changes. A win can feel personal, a loss can feel personal, a criticism can feel personal. That is where a normal tennis story can turn into something much more emotional. But emotion alone does not explain the backlash. So let us look at where the tension actually appears. One part of it comes from tennis culture. Tennis has old traditions about crowd behavior. Fans are expected to stay quiet during points. Cheering has its moments. Noise has its limits. Then a new audience arrives with enormous excitement and national pride. Most supporters are simply there to enjoy the match. But even a small number of loud or disruptive fans can become very visible. That has created debate around some Filipino supporters at tournaments. The important word is some. This is not evidence that Filipino fans as a whole behave badly. It is evidence that a fast-growing fan base is entering a sport with traditions that may not be familiar to every new supporter. same crowd. Two interpretations. One person sees passion, another sees disruption. Neither reaction automatically tells us what Alex did. That is important. A player cannot control every cheer from the stands. A player cannot control every comment posted by someone using her photo. But online, those boundaries disappear quickly. The athlete, the supporters, the country, and the hype start getting treated like one thing. And because Alex is the reason many of those fans are there, frustration with the crowd can quickly become frustration connected to her name. Then the same thing happens online. A post is about another player. Someone brings up Alex. A ranking discussion starts. Someone compares the player to Alex. A tournament post appears. The comment section becomes another argument about Alex. Again, that does not describe every fan. It does not even prove that most fans behave that way. But it creates something important: saturation. A person can like an athlete and still get tired of hearing about that athlete. That is normal. Imagine a song you enjoy. You hear it once, great. You hear it again, still good. Then you hear it every morning, every afternoon, every store, every video, every social media feed. Eventually, your reaction changes, not because the song suddenly became worse, because repetition changed how you feel about hearing it. Athletes can create the same reaction. A tennis fan may start by thinking Alex is exciting. Then they see her name everywhere. They see constant comparisons. They see fan arguments. They see unrelated posts pulled back toward the same player. Soon, the frustration is no longer about the tennis. It is about the feeling that Alex is unavoidable. That is the first major clue. Some of what looks like hate toward Alex may actually be irritation with the environment around Alex. And if that distinction already feels important to you, keep it in mind before choosing a side, because the next layer is where this stops being a normal fan debate. Stay with the full story before choosing a side, because the most important evidence changes what the word hate even means here. There is a big difference between criticizing a player and criticizing the hype around a player. There is also a big difference between criticizing a fan base and hating the athlete at the center of that fan base. Those different reactions often get mixed together. That makes the backlash look much simpler than it really is. Some people are genuine tennis critics. They are not convinced yet. They see a young player getting major attention and want more results before they accept the biggest claims. That is not automatically hate. That is sports debate. Sometimes harsh debate, but still debate. And this is where the title of this story can fool us if we are not careful. A negative comment is not always hatred. A skeptical fan is not always a hater. Someone who thinks the media coverage is excessive may still respect Alex as a player. If we put all of those people into one category, we create the same distortion that we are trying to understand. Then there is anti-fandom. This is what happens when people stop judging the athlete and start reacting to the constant presence of the athlete. The player becomes a symbol of the hype. Every headline creates more fatigue. Every comparison creates more resistance. Every argument creates another argument. And then there is the strangest category of all: manufactured controversy. AFP investigated fabricated stories that claimed public figures had made insulting remarks about Alex. Among the names connected to those false stories were Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Filipino broadcaster Mel Tiangco. According to the AFP fact-check, the inflammatory remarks attributed to them were not real. That is a major difference from ordinary criticism. A real negative opinion can be debated. A fabricated attack creates anger around an event that never happened. The audience is not responding to Alex anymore. The audience is responding to a story designed to trigger loyalty, outrage, and national pride at the same time. That matters, because now we are no longer talking about people reacting badly to something Alex actually did. We are talking about outrage being created around her name. Why would anyone do that? Because Alex Eala plus insult plus Filipino pride creates an emotional reaction. People get angry. They share, they defend, they attack, they comment, and the story spreads. That gives us the twist. Alex is not necessarily creating all of the controversy attached to her. Her fame makes controversy involving her valuable. That is a very different thing. The backlash is not one clean group of people who hate Alex. It is several different reactions being compressed into one dramatic label. Tennis criticism, hype fatigue, annoyance with some fan behavior, national pride, fan wars, social media repetition, and sometimes misinformation. Once those layers are separated, the mystery starts making sense. So, I want to know where you land. Do you think Alex herself is overhyped? Or do you think most of the backlash is really about everything surrounding her? Tell me in the comments, because the answer says a lot about what kind of star Alex is becoming. Now we can test the explanation. If the backlash is a side effect of Alex becoming more visible, then the strongest evidence should show two things happening at the same time. Her popularity should be growing, and resistance to that popularity should be growing with it. That is exactly what we see, and the order matters. The attention did not suddenly appear after the criticism. The attention grew first. More fans watched, more media covered her, more people searched for her schedule, more arguments followed. That sequence is important because it suggests that at least part of the backlash is a reaction to visibility itself. Start with the scale of attention. Washington did not simply give Alex a trophy. It showed that people were actively planning around her schedule. At least 80% of recent ticket inquiries were asking when she would play. That is not abstract hype. That is measurable demand. Then look at the Philippines. As Alex kept breaking through, interest in tennis grew around her success. More people followed tournaments. More casual sports fans learned the names of her opponents. More young players saw elite tennis as something connected to their own country. The meaning of Alex expanded beyond ranking points. She became a symbol of possibility. That increased admiration. It also increased pressure, and pressure attracts criticism. The same result can now produce two completely different conversations. One group celebrates history. Another group asks whether the coverage is getting ahead of the career. One group sees national pride. Another sees excessive hype. Neither side is necessarily talking about the tennis anymore. They are talking about the meaning attached to the tennis. Now look at the debate inside the fan base itself. Some Filipino fans criticize behavior they think crosses tennis etiquette. Others defend the energy and argue that passionate support should not be treated like a national embarrassment. That disagreement is important. It proves this is not a simple fight between Filipinos and outsiders. It is a debate about what support should look like when a new national audience enters an old sporting culture. Alex becomes the face of that debate, even when she says nothing. Then look again at the fabricated stories. Fake outrage only works when people care enough to react. An unknown player does not create that kind of emotional market. A player people ignore is not useful for this kind of content. Alex is useful because people care, supporters care, critics care, Filipino sports fans care, tennis fans care. That is why the misinformation matters beyond one fake quote. It tells us Alex has entered a new stage of fame. Her name can now generate attention by itself, and that may be the clearest answer to the original question. Why does the backlash feel louder now? Because Alex is louder in the culture now. A few years ago, the challenge was getting people to notice. Now the challenge is what happens when everybody notices. That does not mean all criticism is unfair. Alex is a professional athlete. People should debate her game. They should question her ranking. They should compare her results with other young players. They should ask whether the hype matches the performance. That is part of elite sports. But criticism of a player is not the same as resentment toward the cultural wave surrounding that player. And resentment toward some fans is not proof that the athlete herself is hated. That distinction is the entire story. So why do some people hate Alex Eala? The most accurate answer is that some probably do. Every famous athlete has people who simply dislike them. But much of what gets labeled as Alex Eala hate appears to be something else. People reacting to hype. People reacting to overexposure. People reacting to certain fans. People reacting to national pride. People reacting to arguments created by other people. And in some cases, people reacting to stories that were not even true. That is why the backlash can look much bigger than the actual dislike of Alex herself. There is an irony here. The stronger the Eala effect becomes, the more resistance we should expect. Not because she is failing, because she is becoming important. Importance creates expectations. Expectations create comparisons. Comparisons create sides. And once people start choosing sides, neutrality becomes harder. For Alex, that creates a new challenge. She still has to improve. She still has to win matches. She still has to handle losses. But now she also has to compete while a flood of opinions forms around her name. That can become heavy. It can also create a strange pressure on the fans themselves. Supporters can feel that every criticism must be answered. Critics can feel that every defense proves the fan base is too intense. Then both sides begin reacting to each other instead of reacting to Alex. That loop can make the internet look far more hostile than the real world around the player. It can also be a sign of something much bigger. A generation of Filipino kids has now seen someone from their country win on the WTA Tour. They have seen what that looks like. They have seen what it feels like. An angry comment section cannot erase that image. So maybe the real story is not that Eala suddenly became hated. Maybe the real story is that she became big enough to be loved, criticized, defended, exaggerated, misunderstood, and argued about all at once. A few years ago, the challenge was getting people to notice Eala. Now the challenge is learning what happens when everybody notices. And the next question is much more interesting than the backlash. How high can she actually go? If you want to see that answer unfold while the story is still being written, subscribe and stay with it. Because the controversy tells us Alex is visible. What she does next will tell us how great she can become.